I'm Christian. I'm the founder and CEO of Paddle. And Paddle builds a platform for recurring billing operations and kind of back office infrastructure for SaaS companies, which puts us in this really interesting position where we see data in aggregate from thousands of SaaS businesses around the world, all at different stages in their growth, all targeting different customer segments. And what I wanted to do today is hopefully share a couple of key insights that we've gained from both this aggregate set of data across these customers, but then also diving deep into some of the stories of some specific companies. So just before this, we both looked at all this data that we've been collecting over the last 7 years, as well as talked to 4 companies who are customers of ours. And we tried to pick a range of companies across different stages in their business, different numbers of people, different routes to funding, and different geographies. So I'll give you a little overview of each of the companies before we dive in. So the first we have is a company called Flixel, and Flixel is a 12-person SaaS business based in Canada. They're seed funded, and they build a platform for photographers to create these really interesting interactive photos called cinemagraphs. The second is a company called Pinegrow, based in Slovenia. 4 people bootstrapped the company, and it's just past that product market fit stage, and now it's starting to scale. And then we have Framer. Framer is a 60-person company. The founders were at Facebook and built this incredible product and decided to kind of spin it out of Facebook and build their own company around it. They raised about $9 million and are based in the Netherlands. And then finally, we have Dudil, 110-person software company based in London, trying to build this incredible platform for accessing private company information. They've raised about $43 million and are kind of just eclipsing that kind of stage of going from scaling to real growth. And then we have kind of Paddle. So Paddle we've been around for about 6 years, and we've been able to utilize all of this data to hopefully help our own growth story and strategies that we've used there. So we started in 2012. Today we're a 140-person company, still all based in London. We've raised about $25 million to continue building this platform to help software businesses scale. And even though this is called Scaling Lessons from 1,000 Software Companies, I think there's one really important point, which is before you scale, you have to survive. And that's the biggest thing that we see among all of this base of customers is kind of the most significant reason for these companies failing isn't anything really dramatic. It tends to be false starts on the journey to scale. It's prematurely trying to hire a huge team. It's investing real money in channels that just aren't working or scaling, or not getting to product market fit before you start really investing. So we surveyed all of these customers. We dug deep with these 4, and we came up with 3 kind of key points that resonated almost across everybody. And we call them the 3 don'ts. It's don't watch the competition, don't launch too much stuff, and don't ignore your customers. And the last one's a really interesting one, because especially with 2 of the companies that we dug deep with, one being Framer and the other being Flixel, both of these companies have managed to build both pre-product market fit and post-product market fit, these really rich communities of people who love and advocate for their products, which means that they can shortcut a lot of these paid acquisition channels that a lot of these companies have to go through to find new segments and find new markets. And it's really important through that journey to accept when it isn't working, iterate on the business, iterate on the channels, iterate on the product. This has basically happened throughout all 4 of these companies. For Framer, it was realizing that the 2 founders of the company who built this prototyping tool for designers were also from a really technical background. And the first version of the product required people to know how to code. And that wasn't going to be the way that we were going to reach every designer and product team in the world. For us at Paddle, it was realizing that the first iteration of our company, we tried to build a B2C marketplace for selling software. We tried to be the app store for business software. And then we came to the realization that wasn't the product that people wanted. It was the infrastructure behind selling software that people wanted. And for the folks at Flixel, it wasn't that there was anything inherently wrong with the product. It was that the product that they were built was resonating incredibly well with creative agencies, as opposed to this big vision that they had of building a consumer product to make cinemagraphs as sort of prolific as Vine or Instagram. And it's really important when these things do start to work and you do start to hit product market fit and you do understand these channels that help you scale, you've often gone on this journey sort of to get there where you've focused really wide, you've focused really broadly to really understand kind of the areas and segments that you're actually able to sell into. And typically, this is sort of a dilution of the original product and the original vision that you had. It was, we've built a product, and now we're going to throw it everywhere and see which sort of segments this really, really resonates with. So it's really important to, once you actually figure out the sort of one or two areas where it really is working, to kind of get away from the noise and really focus on those things. Reduce the number of segments that you focus on. And this was something that came up again and again. Of going too wide too quickly, spreading resources too thin. And it was especially true for one of the companies that we dug deep on, which was Doodle. And Doodle started the business, built this incredible product that people loved. But in the early days, they had these 5 blurry use cases for the product. They had 30,000 companies of different sizes and different scales and different stages and industries using the product, and 8 different segments. And when you have 8 different segments, sort of that's 8 different groups of people that you're trying to build marketing messages or a sales strategy to. It's 8 different groups of people that you have to build and optimize the product for. And when you're an early stage business, kind of focus is the most important thing. So we were trying to dig even deeper on, okay, sort of it's really easy to say, reduce the number of segments, focus more. But how do you kind of get to this point of being able to focus and knowing what to focus on? And it kind of became this idea that the total addressable market for the product that you're building isn't the same as the target market that you're building it for right now. And understanding where you are and where the maturity of the product is at your particular stage of growth is incredibly important. And sort of this was particularly true sort of in the case of Doodle. And what they did and sort of what resonated among all of these companies was price experimentation. And there is absolutely always a good excuse not to experiment with pricing. It's always really uncomfortable, especially if you're going in an upward direction. But the thing that experimenting with pricing really does and really enables is this sort of deep focus. The right segments are going to pay for your product if you double the price. They're going to pay for it if you triple the price. And the wrong segments are going to self-select out of that process. And that was particularly true for Doodle. It was particularly true for Flixel as they went through this process of going from being a B2C product to a B2B product. And the best companies that we see and the most performant companies are changing their pricing on a really regular basis, both as they're going through this kind of process to get to product market fit and then beyond. Sort of one really kind of prominent example of these 4 is Framer. And Framer started their business as a desktop application that they were building and they were releasing in the way that desktop applications used to be built. They would launch an initial version, they would sell it for a one-time price. It was about $150, and then the idea was when they released the next major version, you pay another $150 and you'd upgrade to that. And sort of that was great for them, and they got all the money up front. It was really great for them to build an early team without raising too much money. But then there was this sort of challenge that they went through, which was kind of how do we align the value that we're creating in the product and how we're shipping the product with sort of how the customers actually pay for it. So they very quickly moved to a monthly subscription model, became a SaaS business, and that was their first pricing iteration. So they went from being $150 one time to being $15 a month. And then $15 a month sold to individuals then quickly became, okay, how do we sell to teams? And then how do we sell to teams very quickly come how do we sell to enterprises? How do we monetize additional features? How do we kind of expand the breadth of our product? And this went through 4 or 5 different pricing iterations over the period of a year. And that's typically the behavior that we see from the fastest growing software companies that we work with. Building a team became sort of like was the second topic that was just sort of overwhelmingly talked about among all of these companies. for us, building a team has been sort of one of the harder challenges that we've faced. But I think it always comes back to the whole sort of overarching topic, if you take nothing away from this, is focus. Focusing the segments, focusing the pricing, focusing the customers and the product that you're building. But the focus is correlated directly with the team that you're building. It goes back to the sort of survival before scale, and sort of not having these false starts. When we started Paddle, we had a really small team. It was 2 of us initially, and for the first 3 or 4 years of the company, we never grew sort of the headcount beyond 20 or so people. And sort of the idea that we had behind that was, one, we didn't know what we were doing. I was 18 when I started the company, and sort of getting anyone to work for me at the time was sort of a challenge, let alone sort of however many people that we have now. But sort of the real thing that it did enable us to do was focus. Sort of being constrained from a resource perspective breeds sort of a lot of focus in the things that you can think about and work on. And it's also a lot less risky. Sort of not having to make sort of a massive payroll bill kind of does help a lot in sort of your ability to take risks and your maneuverability. So sort of obviously this is one of the points that is so dependent on the path that you've taken from a fundraising perspective, from a traction perspective, how long it takes you to get to that product market fit. One of the bootstrap company in our 4, Pinegrow, has a formula that they use where of all the money that they make, a third of it goes into growing the team, a third of it goes into growing a product, and a third of it they save for a rainy day. In the case of us and Framer and Flixel, the approach that we've taken is keep a very, very small, nimble team for as long as possible until we were post that product market fit stage, until we were kind of very, very confident in all of the different levers that we had in the business, both around kind of the fit of the product in the market, but then also our ability to actually scale those channels that were working. And sort of we've been on a significant kind of hiring and scaling journey over the last sort of 9 months or so, and it was the only catalyst for that beyond kind of product market fit was really, really getting a deep understanding of kind of our numbers and the deep understanding of the things that needed to be true in order for us to continue to expand. So we've gone, as an example with us, we've gone from 35 people at the beginning of this year to 140 today. We've hired 110 people or so in 10 months, which is incredibly challenging from an organizational perspective as well. So the focus needs to be a huge part of the culture, especially when you're kind of going through this period of hyper growth and scaling. It's very easy to focus the marketing campaign. It's very easy to focus the sales strategy on different segments. It's very difficult to focus the culture. Focusing the culture is the hardest thing that we've had to try and scale throughout our journey. And some of the things that we've tried throughout that process that have really worked is to sort of continue this idea of constant learning and iteration within the business. Just as through the process of getting to product market fit, you're learning about segments and you're learning about growth strategies and you're learning about what you should be building. Encourage that same behavior in the team as well, and enable them to sort of come on that journey with you as opposed to sort of feeling, especially through this sort of significant phase of growth, like kind of they're just along for the ride. That's it for me. I very much encourage you to come and say hello to us at Stand G3. We have lessons from hundreds of other software companies, both from the team there who can kind of tell you some interesting stories, as well as on our website at paddle.com. Thank you.